The top 5 challenges facing Australian home stages and how we are handling them. We're talking staff, how to get more work, pricing, where to source stock, furniture and accessories, and when to take the leap into a new warehouse or truck. There are lots of links and past videos mentioned here. Everything, I'm going to itemize them in the description of this video on YouTube. Let's now go to Jake and Phoebe.
After having obviously the conference and lots of experience, lots of conversations, there is a consistency in the questions that we have come through, and there's a consistency in the types of conversations that we have with business owners. So we thought we would cover the topic of the top 5 challenges that home stages face.
I guess important to say as well, we don't have the answer necessarily. We have our experience with these issues, and I guess today we were going to share some of our insight, some of the things that we've learned in overcoming some of these things and dealing with some of these issues. But I guess the other part of it is the home staging industry, we've found in our experience, is not always great at sharing information.
Yeah.
We're a little bit kind of closed off to competitors and feeling like we've got to be protective of what we know. So hopefully this is a little bit of help to some who might be looking for answers to some of these questions.
Number 1, and she's a biggie, staff.
Probably the biggest one, the most difficult
and
issue.
Like a constant one. Like once you start feeling like you're in a good spot, things go backwards.
Yeah,
and
so
it's a dynamic, ever-changing.
Yep. You never fix a staff issue or solve a problem or get a great team and then that's the end of it. It's constant. There's also different stages of it, like you said, that people, I guess one of the versions of this question that we get a lot is when. When do we bring in when's the right time to bring on a particular person? Who's the right type of person? Is my business big enough now, or do I need to go part-time or contract or full-time, or what rates do I pay? It's all of those sort of questions, right?
Yeah, so rates to pay, best person to check that out is your ombudsman. You give them a call, you describe the role, they will tell you the industry award rate if they fit on an award rate. I have found stylists, they sit on a different industry award, Queensland versus Melbourne. So as long as you've got it in writing from your ombudsman, that's all you need, and it's a really easy first step. You've spoken about when to get those people on before.
Yep. So and look, there is no right answer to any of this. Like I said, it's just our opinion.
Yep.
If you are looking to grow, your ambition is to grow your business, our view is hire the person before you think you need them.
Yep.
Training is another part of that, and a question that comes up a lot: how do I train the people? How do I let go a little bit of what I'm doing as a business owner to allow me to focus on other parts of the business? So we've kind of answered these in part in different videos, but we have a training process in-house. We hire people before we think we need them, not always, but we try to. And then making sure that we're letting go of the wrong people in our team so that we protect that team culture, we protect what it is that we want to do and what standards we want to set for ourselves as a business.
Yeah. Now those training systems have taken quite some time to get in place. I think it was 3 years, maybe two to 3 years before we actually had our first proper training system in place. And that was when we sort of went from 3 stylists to more than that. And that's when we made the transition to our new warehouse, when we got another truck on board. And it was really, I was being inefficient with my time, repeating myself over and over again. So all those thoughts out of my mind came out onto paper to allow the girls to have something to refer to. The truck training system, that's taken a whole lot longer for us to even get something in place. It's something we don't get it right all the time. We're at a place now with our business where we have 30 employees, and getting the structure in place for management and having the hierarchical structure in the business they're the conversations we're having at the moment, and that's extremely difficult for us now to figure out how to get that in place. So again, it's an ever-changing model and something that you do have to review often.
We did not answer that in full because it is a very big question, but hopefully we touched on a few bits there.
Cody can link in a couple of the other times that we've spoken about the training modules that we have, as well as the ones that you've spoken about, when to grow, when to take that leap.
Yep.
What we've found.
So one of the other big questions that comes up, the second one, is how to find new work, how to approach agents, how to, get the revenue and the work in the door.
Yep.
It's probably a great one for you to touch on to start with.
Yeah, so basically since day dot, our strategy has been to be the backup stylist. We just want to, when we call somebody, whenever we reach out to someone, we just want to be a name in the back of somebody's mind. We want to be the recommendation somebody makes. If somebody says home staging, we want to be the name that is synonymous with home staging in Brisbane. Because if we can achieve that, then when somebody needs a home stager in Brisbane, we're going to be the recommendation that comes around. Now, by being the backup stylist, if we can always deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. Well, when the number one stylist for an agent lets them down too many times, we get the step up, and that's how we've grown our business. We don't approach it as a sales opportunity.
No.
We've never,
we're not
ever...
pushy, we're not trying to...
I don't think I would enjoy it. Oh, I just touched the microphone. I don't think I would enjoy it if we had a sales approach to it. I'm there to develop relationships. I want genuine relationships. I want to know what their kids' names are. I want to know what they're doing on the weekend, if they're having fun, if they're going on holidays to New Zealand, or they like skiing. They're the types of relationships I'm building.
There's kind of two things as well that I want to add to that. And one is when we're making the phone calls, when we're approaching agents, a very small percentage of the agents are actually looking for a home stager at that point in time. Like less than 5% of the calls we've ever made have timed it so that the person on the other end of the phone says, great, I actually need a stager and we'll give you a chance. It doesn't happen very often. So that makes it even more important that your phone call isn't about trying to convince them to give you a chance. It's about getting your name in their mind so that they've heard you and doing that consistent or enough that they recognise your name and you're somebody you think of when they need it. But then the other part of that is to get to that small percentage at the start. We don't do this as much anymore, but at the beginning when you need the work, you just got to do a lot of the groundwork, right? You've got to make the phone calls, you've got to send the emails, you've got to do the research.
Presentations.
Those things are how you get started before anybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And then one last thing I'll put on this as well is a longer term part of this, which isn't going to get you work tomorrow or next week, is the marketing side. So for us, we're at the point where we've put so much into our marketing. We've got a full-time marketing team who produce videos and content and pictures and all sorts of stuff. And all of that has led over time, and we had to be patient with it, to people approaching us. And yeah, given it's a long-term play, I think it's something that you should always, as part of what you're doing with the other stuff, is get it started on the social media and the marketing side early.
It's a branding strategy.
Yep.
This is a very consistent conversation that we find. Pricing. How do we price our services? How do we feel about being undercut? Do we discount? What's our approach?
Extension rates. There's always in the community, in the Facebook groups, there's always every now and then people saying, or giving examples of being undercut and getting annoyed at the low pricing and that sort of thing. So it's a constant frustration.
Yep.
There's a couple of approaches that we've kind of looked at, and for those that are hiring furniture, you don't really have a lot of option. You have to...
Actually, before we go into the models, one of the biggest things I think we as an industry might... in Brisbane, undercutting, it's a thing, but it doesn't seem to be as... big as what it is in Melbourne and in certain suburbs in Sydney. It seems to be a very predominant conversation for stylists who are focusing on those areas. So one of the things though that I think we do less of as an industry is recognise that we're not alone in that as an industry. It doesn't matter what industry, trade specific that you're in, whether or not it be painting or sewing or anything like embroidery services, dry clean. It doesn't matter where you are. Somebody is going to be the cheapest, and someone is always going to ask you if you could do cheaper. Now, someone will be the cheapest based on their own pricing. Others will be cheapest based on whether or not they match a cheaper quote. Others will be cheaper whether or not they bid it by 10%. There is always going to be the cheapest. Now, it's a very difficult thing to acknowledge that I'm going to lose this because I'm not going to drop it by 10%, and to let that work go when you have minimal work coming through. And that was, I guess, something that we were able earlier on to make a decision that we don't discount. And if it meant losing the work, well, they're not the clients for us. And it's been a more difficult thing for you, I would say, if you're not seeing those jobs lock in. Not that you've wanted to discount, but not seeing those jobs lock in.
That's pricing
hard,
related. It's more market related.
But it's a hard thing to see those jobs not locking in. So I do understand that. However, in the long run,
we still get frustrated when we lose work to somebody who's come in specifically to be lower price than us. But I guess that whole conversation about low pricing is more of we see that's a big frustration. And I think it's just to say, while we recognise, and it's not easy just to ignore it, we also have to, as an industry, be a little bit okay with it, or at least recognise that it happens everywhere. It's not just us.
Yep.
And then it comes down to if you either you will discount and you will be the cheapest, and that's your business model, and
Yep.
that's okay. Or you need to be able to demonstrate your value, and you need to be confident in what you deliver, and you need to be okay with walking away from work, like I said. So
and being able to confidently communicate your differences.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest things, having those conversations with your vendors, because they're coming to it with two pieces of paper that have a list on it. They don't know that they're not comparing apples with apples.
Yep.
A conversation with a real estate agent is different. It can be very targeted, but a client who's literally comparing two quotes, two pieces of paper, they don't know the difference. So being able to have those conversations, very important.
Going back to the pricing though,
Yep.
there's a couple of different ways to think about pricing.
Yep.
Firstly, if you're hiring furniture, it's generally going to be the cost to hire plus a margin, so plus a 20%, something like that,
Yep.
to make sure that you're profitable on those jobs, and including things like your delivery services and fees and those sort of things. If you own your own furniture, then obviously you're trying to pay back that furniture, because you have to outlay capital to buy the furniture. How quickly are you paying that back? And essentially, putting the profit after that into new furniture and continuing to grow. There's no right or wrong answer on that. I think we kind of started out with the first one, the cost plus margin. As we transitioned into our own furniture, we kept consistent for the most part, or fairly consistent with where that overall pricing sat for us, and we were very deliberate about being just above the middle of the market, or they're about the middle of the market in terms of what our competitors were doing. But then we transitioned into that second one where it was, we know that we pay our furniture back roughly in 3.5 to 4 jobs for a piece of furniture. And that helps set the pricing for what we charge a client, but it also helps set what we purchase on average our stock at.
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's just consider the options, be confident once you make a decision on where your services sit compared to the market, know how to talk about what your value is and why yours is going to be higher than somebody else's.
Extension rates?
Yes.
They're a big conversation. It was a predominant conversation at the conference that we had in February about where should this sit. Now, reflecting at the conversations we had at the conference, when we went back and looked, our extension rates sit around 15%, right? Mm-hmm. So there's, again, no right or wrong. We do it at 15% because that just makes sense per weekly hire for what we were originally charging them.
If we're completely honest, it's also, I don't know why we fell on that number. We divided it by the weekly and we came up with the number.
Yeah.
And we've never really had any issues with that, so it's just stayed the same. We've never really gone and revisited that.
We had the feel for it that, well, we don't want to leave that relationship on a sour note. If it hasn't sold, they need to extend. Well, we're going to extend because if we have to take it out, that's not the right thing to do. However, having had conversations with lots of stylists who are either regional or New Zealand based, there are a lot more challenges associated with just leaving it in the property when you've got other things coming up and your furniture lead time is looking more like 3 or 4 weeks, not 1 to 2 like us. Mm-hmm. So I understand those challenges, I very much do, and I guess it's about setting the expectations on those extensions, same as what you do on your pricing, and then doing something that you're comfortable with. But I don't think there's right or wrong.
I think as well, what I'd add to this is the conversation seemed to be like, what do I charge? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it this divided by weeks? I think that's not that important, and I know it's important, but the difference between an extension at 10% or 8% and 15% is pretty minor at the end. Like if you actually calculate that out, it's not a big difference. I think the more interesting question is when we charge extensions at all, or whether we give something for free, and somebody asking for an extension and us knowing I need that furniture for the next job, but I can't because it's going out there. So it's about, I understand that difficulty as a business going, I need the furniture to do this other job. That house didn't sell, but they want to keep it. So that's a different conversation where we've talked about it and said, at the end of the day, like you've committed to somebody to help them sell their house. It hasn't sold. Pulling it out of there can leave a little bit of a
sour taste.
Distaste there. Yeah, it doesn't work out the way you'd like, and you've done a great job, but it just didn't work, and now they've got a negative feeling. So you've got to be careful about that. What the right rate is, I don't think that's super important. I think it's find something you're comfortable with and then be able to have that conversation.
Yep.
The next one, and this is one that comes up quite a lot, usually in a pretty positive kind of conversation, because it's about growth and it's about wanting to do more and build and whatever, is where to source your furniture, your stock, or your items, what sort of prices, what suppliers, all that sort of thing. And then there's kind of a side part to this, which we don't necessarily have a very good answer for, which is the regional people who have more issues with getting stock quickly and even getting stock at all because they don't have a lot of options. But I guess from our experience, you're probably the one that does all of the... can talk to this better.
So when we first started up, I was using lots of local suppliers. This didn't mean that we did pay higher rates, but I had access to it straight away. And because we were literally locking a job in on a Wednesday and it needed to be installed on the Friday, I needed to pay that surplus to be able to make that happen. As we had the time frame to be able to explore into other options, I found myself in the diverse world of wholesale. And there's a lot of things that go on there. So trade versus wholesale and the differences between the two. Cassie and I then, second year in, got to go down to the Reed Gift Fair in Melbourne. And that was probably the best decision we had made as far as purchasing furniture. Worst timing because it's after tax time, but it made some really great connections. So I prefer the Reed Gift Fair over Decor and Design. I get more quality connections because I like the more boutique feel for what they can provide. So we've found some amazing suppliers by going to those gift fairs. I would highly recommend going. There is one in Melbourne. It's great. There's one in Sydney. It is smaller. So it really depends on what you're after. There are different times of the year. Now, being introduced to all of these trades, they've got business reps and they've just made it so easy for what we do. They're obviously there. I don't know how they work. It feels like they work on a commission-based thing because they are ridiculously easy and over communicative when it comes to using their services. So I love using it. The purchase, they know my limits. They know how much I'm going to purchase something for. So like if you look at Isalbi, for example, they've got a Grand Design Australia range that is costed a little bit higher compared to the rest of their range, and I don't really buy anything from that range. So then there are other suppliers who have the similar knowledge. So they use that to then build and then send me through options and let me know so I have advanced option to purchase or better rates and all those types of things, all that come with building those relationships with those trades. Do we have a list on a website? We've got a list on a blog. I'm pretty sure we've got a list on a blog about all our favourite suppliers. We have done supplier spotlights a number of times. They should be up on our Instagram. And all types of suppliers that you need for your entire styling business have a wholesale account. I have not found one where we don't have a wholesale option. So even...
They don't all give you that option initially, though,
no,
right?
you've got to spend a minimum spend before. It's the same as what you have when you have a repeat client a developer who comes to you and asks for a discount off the bat. Well, you need to have an established relationship before I give you a discount, a VIP repeat client, a discount type of relationship. Well, the trade and the wholesale supplier thing is the same. You'll have to generally fill out an application. You get to go onto account. You pay it later. It works better as far as an income stream. You prefer it, especially at tax time.
Yep.
So all those types of things work very positively. Cody will link the Foxy TV episode that we just recently have done on Foxy on the Reed Gift Fair, and I did go into the suppliers in that one a little bit more in depth. But again, something that you can definitely jump onto a number of different Foxy TV episodes to find information on.
The fifth challenge that comes up quite a lot, it's kind of similar to one that we mentioned before around staff and when to hire the next staff, but this one's more about the capital investment, when to get a warehouse, when to get a truck, when to spend the money on those things. And the reason that this is often a difficult decision for people or as a challenge is because it's...
Cody's written on there, it would be lovely to take a holiday and the business still operate. So we just went on a one-week cruise and I was still working most nights. Take a holiday. We're not there yet.
It still worked, yes.
It still worked. We were in separate rooms and he slept every night, but hey.
It's glorious. Anyway, so the reason that this is something that comes up a lot is because it's generally a pretty significant commitment. Either you're spending a lot on a truck or you're committing to a significant loan, and a warehouse is generally a longer term lease that you're committing to, and they're fixed costs that there's a bit of a fear factor to it. If you're not getting the work in and you're not profitable, then how are you going to pay for these things that you've now committed to that you can't get out of? Having said that, I think our experience is, and again, what is your ambition? Are you looking to grow? What sort of scale are you looking at getting to? You kind of need to know what that is to know that I'm going to need a warehouse to get there. And I think for us, those decisions we've talked about it before, they were kind of forced on us in a way. Like the timing of it, I mean. So we got our first warehouse when we weren't sure, and then very quickly it was full and we were glad we did.
We went from multiple storage sheds to that. When the only reason we would drive, literally, Cassie and I driving past the warehouse, we stopped in, called the guy, came and told us the pricing made far more sense than the storage shed. So we were like, well, let's do it.
Yep.
And then it sort of grew from there. And the efficiency that it gave us by having everything in the one spot, we very much underestimated what that would do. So that was a big perk.
I was going to say the warehouse is kind of a simple numbers problem in a way. Like, at what point does it make more sense to go from the 3 storage sheds you have to a smaller warehouse? But what you don't factor into that is, like you said, the efficiency of having everything in one big room that you can see and having it all set up.
Yep.
So that matters. I think the truck question or the logistics team is a bit different because you're not just buying a truck, you're then having to have the people to run the truck. And it is more significant in terms of the commitment you're making. But in terms of what it does for your business, we found that I mean, I'm not sure where we would be if we hadn't have done that when we did. The flexibility that it gave us, the things that we could say yes to when other people were saying no, the speed that we could make things happen and change things on the fly, and then just having people that are our employees are always going to take care of our furniture better than external, and they care more about the outcomes and doing a good job, whereas, you know, your Ruvalists, while a lot of them still care about all that stuff, they're never part of your team. They don't have the same buy-in. Yeah. So while I don't have an answer on when's the time to do it, I think if that's your ambition to go to the level where you're going to need it one day, the sooner you do it, the sooner you get those benefits. And so I'd say when you get close and you're thinking about it and you're weighing up options, you're probably at that point.
Yep.
Anything
cool.
Easy.
No, but if you've got any more questions that you want us to answer, definitely pop a question below. Cody will get some questions going. Surely he'll pop something up on Instagram. But it's more to generate a conversation and open that conversation, because I think that's the thing that we got most out of the conference, which is not a surprise. That networking, having those conversations. One of the other biggest questions that came up was how to transport lampshades. So if anyone's got some magic information, we'll be open for that.
And
too.
again, just to kind of reiterate what we said at the start, we don't have the answer. We have our answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth seeing different points of view and having other people, you know, if people see it differently than we do, that's valuable as well.
Yep.